Tonight, COVID-19 hits Australia hard. Hundreds of thousands of jobs lost in 1 month, 6 million now relying on JobKeeper. And we're told it'll get worse before it gets better. Pubs and clubs allowed to open again in just a few hours, why many across Sydney say the hangover won't be worth it. A wanted man found hiding in a Western Sydney apartment block. Ricardo Barbaro now charged with the murder of a Melbourne mother. A hack attack on Service New South Wales, how it happened and how many customers have been affected. A plan to buy Virgin causes some serious political turbulence. A public spat erupting between Peter Dutton and the Queensland government. And an inferno in our southwest, the hunt for the firebugs behind this.
This is 10 News First Sydney with Sandra Sully.
Good evening. We knew a shock was coming, but it still packed a punch. The impact of COVID-19 on Australian employment has been revealed and it is devastating. 600,000 people have now lost their jobs and that's only a fraction of the horror story. If it wasn't for the government's emergency handouts, the workforce would have been practically wiped out.
The bad news we knew was coming.
This is a tough day for Australia. A very tough day. Almost 600,000 jobs has been lost. Every one of them devastating.
In just 1 month, the unemployment rate has gone up a full 1%.
Terribly shocking, although not unanticipated.
Underemployment has risen sharply as employers take advantage of new laws allowing businesses to reduce the working hours of their employees, up from 4.9% to a whopping 13.7%.
We knew there would be hard news as the pandemic reaps its impact on Australia.
Young people have been hit hardest. Youth unemployment rose by more than 2% to 13.8%. The participation rate fell 2.5%, the biggest fall since records started back in 1978. 500,000 Australians not even looking for work and therefore not included in the unemployment rate. If they were, it would already be nudging 10%.
And clearly the JobKeeper program has been incredibly effective.
If it wasn't for JobKeeper, we might be staring down the barrel of a 20% unemployment rate, rivaling the tragedy of the Great Depression.
6 million Australians have been supported at their worst moment.
Labor wants the government to do better, baring its teeth.
Aren't more Australians out of work today because the Prime Minister deliberately excluded them from the JobKeeper wage subsidy?
It doesn't take long, Mr Speaker, for the white-handing to begin.
How much shorter would unemployment queues be today if the government had implemented the JobKeeper wage subsidy earlier and included more groups, including casuals?
Well, Mr Speaker, it's a joke getting a question about jobs from the member who was going to saddle Australians with the highest tax-to-GDP ratio in the history of the Commonwealth.
The attacks make it easier to understand why the Prime Minister didn't want Parliament to sit during the coronavirus crisis. But that's not how democracy works, especially not a parliamentary democracy like ours.
Under pressure, the coalition finally agreed to Parliament coming back mid-next month, by which time the next set of unemployment figures are expected to paint an even grimmer picture.
Well, our network political editor Peter Van Onselen is live now from Canberra. Peter, so when do the experts expect things might start to improve?
Sandra, one of the problems is that the experts can't agree on a time, even if they tried. Things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. They all agree on that, certainly when it comes to the headline unemployment number, because so many millions of Australians are being kept in jobs because of JobKeeper. And we also know with the participation rate down, there are hundreds of thousands of Australians hidden from view when it comes to that unemployment number. And we don't know what will happen when the JobKeeper payments eventually stop. That's that's one of the reasons why there's such a big debate starting now between Labor and the government over how JobKeeper should be constituted. So a long time to go before this gets better. The real issue is how much worse does it get, and does that getting worse have a flow-on effect that affects so many Australians that it becomes overwhelming, even for a government like ours to deal with, because globally we have low debt, and if anywhere in the world can deal with this economic crisis that is global, Australia is as well placed as anyone.
Still uncomfortable news. Peter Van Onselen, thank you. Well, pubs and clubs will be allowed to open their doors again at midnight tonight as restrictions begin to ease across the state. But many say the 10-person limit means operating is still virtually impossible, and that the cost of allowing people in will still keep them out of business. 4 new cases of COVID-19 have been diagnosed in New South Wales in the last 24 hours after almost 10,000 tests. Our total case number is 3,063, with more than 2,500 people now recovered from the virus. But as restrictions begin to ease, we're being told it is more important than ever to keep social distancing, with case numbers almost certain to rise.
Opening up for dining in for the first time in 7 weeks. For the publican of the Buena Hotel, it's a good feeling.
We've got a full house already. Family and friends have been ringing off the hook. Sort of, they've got a bit of cabin fever, so everyone's ready to go.
A chance to prove they can make it work, because they need, not just want, the government to go further.
This is what we do, and we want to be open soon. We need to be open soon, because financially we're almost off a cliff.
From 12:01 a.m. tonight, restaurants, cafes, pubs and clubs are allowed to serve just 10 dine-in patrons, and they must be seated 1.5 metres apart. From tomorrow, you're also allowed to have 5 people visit your home, and if you gather outside, that number doubles. But all this comes with a warning.
Just be mindful of crowds, be mindful of what you're doing. Don't touch surfaces unless you absolutely have to.
Some restaurants are ready to go. At the Stars Sokyo restaurant, first bookings will be at 1 minute past midnight. Others are being more cautious.
To actually make it safe for our staff to reopen, and also, more importantly as well, safe for our customers. And we need at least a week to do this.
And even as these restrictions lift, the government is considering others, including holidaying within the state. But they say crossing state borders may take a little longer.
I often joke with the Queensland Premier that I'll end up going to Auckland before I end up going to Brisbane.
For businesses, adaptation is now a part of life. At the Flat Rock Brew Cafe in Narembeen, they're converting the cellar and function space, but they still don't know if financially it'll be worth it.
Reopen the kitchen, that's what we're assessing. We're assessing the costs, the risk-reward ratio basically, about whether it's worth opening or continue with our takeaway beer that we sell.
Even with restrictions easing, back to normal is still a long way off yet. Ursula Hager for 10 News First.
Armed police have raided a Western Sydney apartment building, taking one of the country's most wanted men into custody. Police had been searching for Ricardo Barbaro since last Monday after the body of his girlfriend was found in her Melbourne home. Tonight he's on the way back to Victoria to face murder charges.
Are you a killer, Ricardo?
Wanted for murder, 33-year-old Ricardo Barbaro, now in the back of a police van on his way back to Melbourne.
Did you kill Ellie, Ricardo?
This after his dramatic arrest by New South Wales police at a Wentworth Point penthouse where he'd allegedly been staying with a woman.
They were wearing all black. I think they had a rifle, had some night vision goggles, and yeah, they were just outside. It's crazy.
I could hear a lot of noise coming from one of the apartments. The door was being banged into all the time.
Barbaro's lawyer said he was willing to surrender peacefully and, while being arrested, has received some significant injuries. Ricardo Barbaro had been on the run from Victorian police for the past 10 days. Homicide detectives had wanted to speak to him about the murder of his on-again, off-again girlfriend, 26-year-old mum Ellie Price. Her body was found in her South Melbourne townhouse on May 4, beaten and with her throat cut. But Victorian police believe she could have lain there dead for up to a week. A nationwide manhunt for Barbaro led police to this apartment block in Sydney's Wentworth Point last night after a tip-off.
They started calling out to this person by the name of Ricardo. Ricardo, listen to what we're telling you. You won't be harmed.
Ricardo is the younger brother of the slain Sydney gangster Pasquale Barbaro, who was shot dead in Earlwood in Sydney's inner west in 2016.
Barbaro spent last night and most of today in the cells below here at Burwood Police Station before being transported to Silverwater, where the Victorian homicide detectives were waiting for him for that long drive back to Melbourne.
Ricardo Barbaro is expected to arrive there sometime tomorrow and should be back in court this weekend. Steve Hart for 10 News First.
Potentially sensitive personal information may have been breached after hackers targeted Service New South Wales. Lachlan Kennedy has more on this story. Lachlan, police are now investigating.
Sandra, the Cyber Crime Squad is now on the case after a staff member from Service New South Wales opened and clicked on a phishing email sent from a hacker. Now, phishing emails are designed to look legitimate, but once you open the attachment or click on the link, they can install malware on your computer, or in this case, a network. 47 staff email accounts at Service New South Wales have been compromised, and in those accounts, the personal information of customers right across the state. It is unclear how many people have had their personal information breached, but it is believed to only impact those people who have either been to a Service New South Wales branch in person or contacted them on the phone, not those who've transacted online over the internet. What is very interesting about this is the internal investigation here began on April 22nd, but the minister in charge, Minister Dominello, was only told about this hack on Tuesday this week. He immediately told the Auditor General and police, but it begs the question, why has it taken 3 weeks for the public and the minister to be told about this breach?
This is a huge breach of not only the information of people's private information, but a breach of trust.
10 News First has been told staff members have previously raised concerns about the security and integrity of upgrades here at Service New South Wales, but had their concerns dismissed. Sandra, Service New South Wales says it will be contacting any customers it believes have had their personal information compromised by these hackers.
Lachlan Kennedy, thank you. A public spat has erupted between the Queensland and federal governments over plans to save Virgin Australia. Our neighbours up north say they want to bid to save the battling airline. Barter's National Affairs editor Hugh Riminton reports many argue that idea is just pie in the sky.
Locked down but not unloved. Confirmation that numerous players are still jostling for the hand of Virgin Australia.
Virgin will keep flying and will fly into the future.
And looking to buy in the Queensland government.
That may form an equity stake, it may be a loan, it may be some sort of concessional arrangement, it may be some sort of other financial instrument.
With a tight state election coming, that triggered a coalition pile-on.
This is nothing more than a populist brain fart. They can't even run trains. They can't run trains on time. How are they going to run an airline?
Peter Dutton, I thought you were talking about someone who was serious and could be taken credibly.
I cannot understand for the life of me how people don't want to back Queensland and back Queensland jobs.
On Twitter, the Queensland Treasurer advised Peter Dutton to stick to cruise ships, a reference to the Ruby Princess linked to more than 20 coronavirus deaths. The Queensland state plan matches that of federal Labor.
This is an ideal time, if anything. This is the bottom of the market, that's for sure.
The federal government has always wanted to stay out of Virgin.
The federal government's not in the business of owning an airline. We're interested in a market solution.
And that position appears vindicated, with Virgin's administrators saying there is real competitive tension as major players battle it out.
Our skies might be empty now, but we won't want for choice once those restrictions ease. The regional carrier Rex, which was saved from bankruptcy by federal government funds, now says it has a compelling case to open a full capital city service. It hopes to do so by March next year.
If we've got 3 commercially viable airlines flying domestic routes, so much the better.
The real horse race for Virgin begins tomorrow, when the early bids must be in. After that, it'll be all on to close a deal before the end of next month. Hugh Riminton for 10 News First.
Well, international travel may be further away than we first thought, with aviation authorities predicting things won't be back to normal for another 3 years. The CEO of the International Air Transport Association said today they are adjusting their forecast to 2023 to reflect the severity of the COVID-19 crisis. Yesterday, the Chief Medical Officer said he had no vision of when international travel will resume. China is continuing to ignore Australia's attempts to discuss growing trade tensions over beef and barley imports. Senior politicians are calling for calm, but Beijing's foreign minister has taken a public swipe, claiming Australia needs to pull its weight and do more in the relationship.
As Australia tries to dial down the diplomatic thermostat.
I'm in the throes of attempting to reach out to my counterpart in China.
Has your counterpart responded to you?
Not yet.
The United States continues to turn up the heat.
U.S. officials say Chinese hackers were already focused on the United States, trying to steal research from universities and pharmaceutical companies that were working on a cure.
The Chinese for years have targeted biomedical research, and there's nothing more important than COVID-19 research right now in that field.
China is so far ignoring Australia's attempts to discuss growing trade tensions over beef and barley.
但这需要双方的共同努力。
Publicly, its foreign minister says a sound and stable relationship is in the common interests of both countries, but that requires a joint effort, and Australia needs to meet Beijing halfway.
The great thing about sovereignty is we always respect the sovereignty of other nations, and we simply expect the same in return. And I think that's a pretty fair deal.
The relationship has been strained since the Prime Minister began pushing for a global inquiry into the origin of COVID-19.
This is dangerous speculation. We've got to be calm and methodical about this.
Labor regards these issues as being separate.
But that hasn't stopped some in Labor from accusing the Morrison government of mishandling Australia's relationship with its largest trading partner in order to win favour at home.
Well, I don't think that's a serious criticism. The government's done nothing more than stand up for our values.
When it can get someone to return their calls.
We're going to keep doing everything we possibly can, and that's the approach we'll take.
Tegan George for 10 News First.
Stay with us. After the break, the refs spat with the NRL takes a legal twist. Police charge a truck driver over this scary moment on a major highway. The Western Sydney Primary School getting a COVID clean. While the state's public servants are facing a very tough choice. And coffee drinkers, listen up. We reveal some health risks that'll keep you up at night.
Sandra Oh and Stanley Tucci join Graham Norton for a night of five-star fun.
I've got goosebumps.
8:30 Friday on 10.
Well, would you rather keep your job and forego your annual pay rise, or maybe receive the bump and then watch colleagues being forced out the door? That seems to be the question being put to thousands of New South Wales public servants. The state government giving its strongest indication yet, public sector wages will be frozen to save jobs.
They make sacrifices every day. Now public servants likely face another, their 2.5% pay rise.
We've not yet made a decision on the future of salaries and wages, but we need to put everything in context.
The Premier and Treasurer trying to lay out that context, comparing job losses in the private sector with the security of public service.
We employ about 10% of the workforce in New South Wales. We've not asked anyone to reduce their hours. We've not asked anyone to stop working. We've not asked anyone to cut their salary.
We're looking down the track at up to a 10% unemployment rate in the state. A number of people are taking pay cuts. I need to make sure we balance that with our wages policy here.
Treasury is forecasting a $9 billion drop in revenue next financial year, and that's put public servant pay under the microscope.
There is a difference between what they deserve and what we can afford to give under these unique circumstances.
That wasn't a problem last year, as top bureaucrats had their pay packets increased to $599,000 per year.
And I will call it out, it is hypocrisy.
The CEO of Infrastructure New South Wales bumped more than 12%, the Secretaries of Health, Communities and Transport more than 5%, education and treasury 1%.
I'm not sure how you tell a cleaner in a hospital on $50,000 you are not going to get a pay rise for exposing yourself to COVID in this crisis, yet the people that are supervising you are getting huge pay rises.
Meanwhile, this job ad is raising eyebrows. It's for a new Rural Fire Service Commissioner. That's despite former Deputy Rob Rogers being given the role last month. Fortunately for him, it's only a technicality and the job is his. Lachlan Kennedy for 10 News First.
A school in Sydney's West has been closed for deep cleaning after a teacher tested positive to COVID-19. It comes just days after students returned to the classroom as face-to-face learning was phased in.
Workers wearing masks and white protective suits spray every single surface inside the gates after Werrington Public School confirmed.
We had a confirmed case of COVID-19 in a staff member.
While this is an unsettling schoolyard scene, we're being told it's the new norm.
We should expect what we've seen happen at Werrington overnight, or in fact at Warragamba last week, to become a frequent occurrence.
10-year-old Sienna Wisniewski was only back in the classroom for 3 days before her school was forced to close.
We want to know what's going on so we know how to isolate or who to isolate.
Her mother, Sarah Bennett, has been anxious to hear whether her daughter was exposed and whether she would be allowed to return to work in aged care.
I can pass it on to one of the elderly residents and, yeah, it won't be nice.
The school says it will let parents know when it's safe for students to come back to the classroom and resume their lessons on site. Until then, they'll have to continue their learning from home. It comes as the Federal Education Minister announced teachers will no longer have to give students a grade and can opt for a progress report during the pandemic instead.
Along with the absence of NAPLAN this year, it will allow teachers to focus on the needs of their students.
NAPLAN is not quite off the table. For the first time, schools are being given access to the material online so they can monitor their students' progress. But test results aside, our state is already lagging. With all Western Australian students back to the class from Monday, our Premier is pushing for Term 3. Paris Martin for 10 News First.
The Porsche driver who allegedly filmed and then taunted a dying police officer has been refused bail. A Melbourne magistrate found Richard Pusey was an unacceptable risk to the public, citing concerns over his poor driving history, his mental health and substance abuse. But the magistrate also said that filming the aftermath of the crash that claimed 4 police officers' lives, though highly intrusive and morally repugnant, was not illegal. It could be 2 years before Pusey stands trial. A truck driver has been charged after handing himself into police following this alleged road rage attack on the Hume Highway at Menangle last weekend. These pictures we showed you last night show a ute trying to overtake the small truck, but it persistently veers into its path. At one point, it even appears to slam into the front left side of the smaller vehicle. A 47-year-old was charged with numerous driving offences and will face court later this year. Police are still searching for the driver of the ute. To the skies now to check on Pika. Marina Ivanovic are over Homebush Bay Drive tonight, so how is it below?
Sandra, Homebush Bay Drive itself is looking really good tonight around the Sydney Olympic Park area. It's further south of the M4 that we are seeing the congestion for Centenary Drive. As you can see as I zoom here, we're seeing the very heavy southbound delays, all 3 lanes approaching Arthur Street. Northbound traffic also a little slow through there as well. And a little bit further up north, the Ryde Bridge is looking good both ways. I'm Marina Ivanovic in the Car City Traffic Chopper.
The latest on our weather now with you-know-who, Tim Bailey. Tim, I have to say, I don't like it. You are giving me the chills, my friend.
It was the sort of day you wanted your money back, Souls, didn't you? Southerly wind at 50k an hour, not much good to us. And the rainfall we copped, 13 mils up on the Central Coast and 10 mils at Elanora Heights. Around about 3 millimetres in Sydney. Point Frederick, we can always find a bit of beauty even in a grey old day. Look at that beautiful place to be today. As far as the temperatures were concerned, let's have a look back in Sydney, and it was a knee knocker. Started at 10 and just climbed ever so slowly to 18. Currently it is a bit goosebumpy at 14 degrees. New South Wales today, the high just 25 Murwillumbah, the low Thredbo. Here comes the snow, -5. Broken Hill did 14, Lismore 23. The super suburbs of Sydney Sydney. It was a grey old day. I didn't do some of my finest today. Penrith 19, Campbelltown 18, Bankstown 19 and Mascot 18 degrees. We'll work on some blue sky later in the bulletin.
If you could. Thank you, Mr Bailey. Up next, after the break, the US President at odds again with his health experts. Clashes in Hong Kong, what has sparked the drama? And the goats who weren't kidding when they overran this quiet neighbourhood. Let's check today's petrol prices around the suburbs of Sydney. The cheapest we found today was at Fairfield, 98 cents. The average price across the city, $1.13.6, and we're told those prices are going to keep going up.
Car City is making it easier for you to safely buy your next vehicle, 7 days a week. Wander comfortably through 10 acres of vehicles while safely practicing social distancing, or find the car you want online and we'll bring it to you. Carlisle Avenue, Minchinbury, carcity.com.au.
Infused oil deluxe crisps from Red Rock Deli.
Right now, at ANZ, we know that many Australians need a little more support to stay on top of their money, which is why we're working hard to support the financial well-being of our customers. So, if you're looking to ease the pressures of your home loan, you need support through the ups and downs of business, or if you need a hand sorting your banking from home, we're here for you and ready to help. For more information on how to get back on top of things, visit anz.com.
The biggest twist of all.
Katy Perry! Let's go!
7:30 tonight.
The rift between Donald Trump and his most senior infectious diseases expert is deepening. The US president today continued to call on state governors to move forward with reopening their schools and businesses. That's despite Dr. Anthony Fauci's warnings of serious consequences if it's done too soon.
I was surprised by his answer, actually, because, it's just... To me, it's not an acceptable answer. We're opening our country. People want it open.
Meanwhile, Trump's former presidential campaign chairman has been released from prison over corona fears. Paul Manafort had been serving 7 years behind bars for charges related to the Russian election meddling investigation. Germany is set to begin reopening its borders this weekend with the aim of freeing up travel across Europe by mid-June. Chancellor Angela Merkel closed all German borders 2 months ago to try to limit the COVID outbreak. The European Union has also unveiled a range of measures to allow people to safely travel across the continent and try to revive its crippled tourism industry. There have been more violent clashes between riot police and pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong. Flash mob protests sprung up in at least 10 shopping centres, triggering multiple confrontations with officers. The demonstrators were calling for the resignation of the territory's pro-Beijing leader, Carrie Lam, who was celebrating her birthday. Hong Kong has seen almost daily protests over the last week after months of relative calm due to coronavirus. Brazil has overtaken Germany and France to record the world's 6th highest number of known COVID cases. 189,000 people have tested positive, even with a much lower rate of testing than most developed countries. Despite the soaring numbers of infections and deaths, Brazil's president has declared gyms and beauty salons can open for business. In California, hundreds of goats have overrun a quiet residential neighbourhood, causing chaos for residents. No kidding, the tribe was being used to clear a nearby hillside, but escaped through a broken fence and then charged towards the below streets. They were eventually rounded up, but not before snatching what they could from several well-manicured gardens. Well, coffee addicts will tell you they need a shot of caffeine to get through the day. But new research shows that too many flat whites can create a bumpy road towards good health. Experts are advising those in need of a cuppa should consider some healthier alternatives.
A latte a day doesn't keep the doctor away.
I probably have 2 coffees a day, maybe 3 at the tops. It's latte or cappuccino.
It's no secret that Australians love coffee, but your regular double shot might also be hitting your waistline. A new study by the University of South Australia has found excessive caffeine consumption increases the risk of bone and joint conditions like osteoarthritis and obesity.
I think it's not the coffee itself, but it's what we put in the coffee. So it's all the creams and syrups and sugars that come together with the coffee.
We've just done a 100 k's ride, so we're not worried about obesity.
Globally, the world consumes more than 3 billion cups of coffee every day. Experts recommend paying attention to how our bodies react to caffeine and adjust our intake accordingly.
If you start having adverse effects after having a cup of coffee or when you know your limits, just listen to your body. And it's never good to drink more than your body tells us.
If you're thinking about changing up your cappuccino order, black coffee is considered a healthier option.
A little bit of milk if you need on the side just to cut that acidity. Sometimes a lot of people do that. Even some steamed milk if you miss the frothiness on top.
If you're wondering how many cups of coffee a day is too many, previous research suggests 6 cups is starting to push the limit. Luckily for me, this is just latte number 5. Although for some, no coffee is no problem.
Green tea, good for you.
Taylor Ryan for 10 News First.
Stay with us after the break. The impact of today's confronting employment figures on our share market and the dollar. Plus, the show to end for a piece of Sydney's history. And the cancer specialists adapting to the times to bust myths.
You. We can. Together.
Meet the crew. They got their own way of betting. And this is me. I've always got the answer.
Make this Saturday one to remember. Get $4 odds for either Geetra or Santa and Elaine to win the Goodwood. PointsBet.
Businesses are facing an overwhelming amount of information. Business Australia can help you get the answers to your toughest questions with our free business advice lines. Get the support you need at businessaustralia.com.
Guess who's back? Comedy legend Glenn Robbins joins the team on Have You Been Paying Attention? Monday after MasterChef.
Tonight's top stories. The COVID-19 shutdown is seriously hurting employment. Almost 600,000 people lost their job between March and April. Those figures would have been much worse if it wasn't for the federal government's emergency handouts. Well, here's cheers. For the first time in 7 weeks, some pubs and clubs are getting ready to open up. But for many of the bigger venues across the state, it is not financially worth it. And alleged murderer Ricardo Barbaro is facing a long drive back to Melbourne in the back of a prison van. He was nabbed by police early in a Western Sydney apartment after a 10-day manhunt. Police suspect an arsonist was behind a dangerous blaze which destroyed dozens of vehicles at a wrecking yard in the southwest of Sydney. It was a volatile battle for firefighters to stop it from spreading to other properties as fuel tanks exploded around them.
A ferocious inferno, even more dangerous than usual for those battling to control it.
Firefighters have fought very, very courageously tonight amidst numerous explosions, running fuel fires. We had fire burning over the top of the fire hoses.
With about 50 vehicles ablaze, it was a minefield for firefighters.
The fire was growing extremely rapidly. We had numerous problems trying to contain the fire. Numerous fuel tanks were rupturing, LPG tanks exploding, gas cylinders exploding.
Fire erupted in a car wrecking yard just before midnight in at least 3 different spots. The work of a suspected arsonist who used an accelerant. It took more than 2 hours to extinguish and even longer before it was safe for investigators to examine the scene. Because the site is in an industrial area, out of view of any residential properties, police are hoping someone driving past at the time the fire started might have seen something.
You never know if someone leaving the area or anyone suspicious, they can just contact Crime Stoppers.
They're also hoping CCTV from the scene could lead them to those responsible. Leah Harris for 10 News First.
Well, it looks like the end of an era for Sydney's George Street, with the last major cinema set to make way for a skyscraper. Sydney Pete is there for us. Sydney, its future is being decided right now.
That's it, Sandra, and I can tell you just moments ago, the development application that would see the event cinema here on George Street be demolished has been approved by the Central Sydney Planning Committee. Now, in its place, a $692 million mixed-use high-rise will be constructed here. Now, that will be a mix of commercial outlets as well as residential apartments, 507 serviced apartments to be specific. But the move will see the curtain fall on the historical cinema precinct here on George Street. Now, Event Cinemas has long been a venue for premieres and film festivals, and before that, many people will remember the Hoyts Entertainment Complex. Now, that was built in 1976 with much fanfare. Even at the launch, they had a performing elephant just to show how big a deal it was at the time. Then, of course, we had the beautiful Regent Theatre next door. That was demolished in 1988, and of course, the Plaza, home of Planet Hollywood, across the road. But these cinemas and smaller screens around the area have one by one slowly made way for new developments. Now, heritage experts say that it's just part of the changes we're seeing as the movie industry moves away from these standalone establishments.
They started bringing in the multiplex cinema, so there were multiple cinemas in the same location where you'd have an independent cinema. So lots of the cinemas closed in the 1950s with the advent of television. It's probably true to say that that trend has continued.
Now, for almost a century, this place has been the spot to come for cinematic entertainment in Sydney, but it is sure to look a lot different now this development application has been approved.
Well, you never know, Sydney, who may take up those commercial leases. Fingers crossed. Thank you. One final check on the run home, so let's get to Marina again. Marina, Parramatta Road right now, pretty slow.
Yes, Sandra, Parramatta Road being its usual congested self heading outbound at the moment. It's between Clyde and the Granville area. A very heavy outbound run, as you can see, all delays approaching Woodville Road. Woodville Road northbound a little slow as well. And if you're heading through Greystanes, we've got a car broken down for the M4 outbound. It is in the breakdown lane with some slight delays behind it. I'm Marina Ivanovic in the Car City Traffic Chopper.
Let's get to the day in sport now with Matt Burke. And Matt, another win for Peter V'landys.
Yeah, that's right, Sandra. Good evening. And that's despite plenty of pushback from the coaches, as the league's boss gets his way on going back to one referee. His reasons after the break. Plus, the amazing comeback for Bulldogs 5'8" Kieran Foran for the season restart.
Car City is making it easier for you to safely buy your next vehicle. 7 days a week. Wander comfortably through 10 acres of vehicles while safely practicing social distancing, or find the car you want online and we'll bring it to you. Carlisle Avenue, Minchinbury. carcity.com.au.
At Coles, we're helping lower the cost of dinner with some of the key ingredients for delicious slow cooker beef with cheesy dumplings. Like Coles no added hormones gravy beef down to $15 a kilo. Save $3. Coles real beef stock 1 litre, just $1.90 every day. And salted butter 250 grams, $2.80 every day. Find this recipe and more at coles.com.au. Coles, helping you lower the cost of dinner. Good things, great value.
Hey mate, sign here.
Sign here. Fast track your shop with Repco Home Delivery.
The biggest twist of all.
Katy Perry! Let's go!
7:30 tonight.
Tonight's Sport Report is brought to you by Repco. Get your order delivered to your door. Shop now at repco.com.au.
Good evening. Well, he won the battle to bring in a new one-referee system, but the whistleblowers could wreak revenge on a furious Peter V'landys. The referees are threatening legal action, claiming a reduction in the two-ref system could be dangerous to players. Here's Emma Lawrence.
Well, the Referees Association are not happy with this decision to cut down to one ref, and they say they're taking it to the Fair Work Commission. Peter V'landys hit back this afternoon and he did not miss.
Totally ludicrous, and I don't think his confrontational and misleading approach is helping his association. We've done nothing wrong. All the 21 referees that are full-time will be kept.
Now, most coaches wanted to stick with 2 refs and don't like this new rule of 6 more tackles for a ruck infringement. But Peter V'landys didn't cave to the pressure because he says it's not a popularity contest.
My job is to have everyone on a level playing field. The coach's job is to get an edge and, use the rules to their advantage to get an edge. I've got to counteract that.
I would have liked to have, left alone from a point of view of that I really love the game the way it is, but, they've made the change now and we've got to go with it.
We can critique it and we can be negative about it, or we just crack on with it.
Of course, there is a financial benefit of cutting down to 1 ref, but V'landys says the decision was made in large part because that's what the fans want.
18,000 people responded, and I tried to read the survey. I got to 3,000 responses, and the 2 things that came out of it was 1 referee and the wrestle. You've got to listen to your customers. If you don't listen to your customers, you're going to lose them.
And some great news for rugby league fans. Tomorrow we should have the draw for the next 2 rounds of the season.
Bryce Cartwright is the only Titan left standing against the flu shot policy after Brian Kelly rejoined his teammates today after getting his jab. It comes as Broncos coach Anthony Seibold slams suggestions Queensland clubs should accommodate anti-vaxxers by moving games south.
If we're going to cater for the minority, then we're kidding ourselves, really. If we're having to go to Sydney because 7 players from a couple of different teams haven't got the jab, I think that'd be quite unfair. And late today, Peter V'landys wouldn't rule out moving games south, but said it is unlikely. With the Victorian government allowing football teams to train again, the Melbourne Storm have returned home from the New South Wales border town of Albury. Josh Addo-Carr clearly doesn't feel the cold, while captain is still sporting a beard, and for a 36-year-old, Cam Smith still boasts good hands. The Storm can use Amy Park for training and remain hopeful of playing all home games there as well when the NRL season resumes on May 28. Good news for Bulldogs fans. Kieran Foran says he'll be right for the first round back. The 5'8" is coming off shoulder surgery after getting injured with the Kiwis late last year.
I'm probably in some of the best physical shape I've been in 3 or 4 years. Just with the sheer amount of work I've had to do, how hard I've had to go to get myself right.
It's a 3-way race to partner Foran in the halves between Lachlan Lewis, Jack Hogger and Brandon Wakeham. Now, if you can't get to the bike track, bring the bike track to you. That was the philosophy for our pro mountain biker Matt Jones, who has spent the corona lockdown completing his ultimate backyard playground. Now, it wasn't fun wheelbarrowing 20 tonnes of dirt around, but so worth it in the end when they got on the 2 wheels. So, for jumping in and getting their hands dirty, Matt and his mates can ride away with our play of the day. And satisfaction, Sandra, there of being able to ride what you've been able to build at the end there. So good.
Yeah, gets the job done. Thank you, Matt. Stay with us. Up next, we dig down into today's employment figures, and it's not a pretty picture.
And not putting too fine a point on it, that was a day that was hit by the ugly stick. Let's hope the precipitation was in the paddocks at Camden. Blue sky coming your way for the weekend. We'll find out next.
Whole grain oats? Yes. Artificial colours and flavours? No. Delicious ingredients? Yes. Preservatives? No. Big taste? Yes. Nature Valley. Get more out.
It's a fiery Friday with MasterChef's Jock Zonfrillo.
I'm going to keep it short and sweet like that dessert, mate. The dish is pretty as.
Political powerhouse Julie Bishop. And an inside look at the show that'll have dog lovers begging for more. Tomorrow on Studio 10.
Well, Tim is back because you know he'd never miss Timmy time. Tim, you need to ditch the grey stuff, my friend, and start dishing up your trademark blue.
That one wasn't much good, Souls, was it? It was damp, it was windy, it was a cloud fest. I'll pull up my socks, folks, and go looking for some blue sky right now as we hit the Daily Bailey weather wall. The forecast where we get it all. Cold front zips through southern parts of WA, as you can see. The Great Australian Bight, there's plenty of action down there, headed Tasmania's way. Cold front moves out over the Tasman Sea, and in behind that some cloud, and that dropped a little bit of precipitation across Sydney town and coastal New South Wales today, and we'll do a little bit of that again tomorrow as a trough starts to form off coastal New South Wales. The weather map, that will illustrate it a little bit better for you. Big high pressure system in the southeast of Australia dominating, ridging back to northern New South Wales. The trough around about the central coast of New South Wales produces those big southerly winds too, thanks to the high driving up the coast. It'll be a bit showery, coastal areas for the next 2 or 3 days. West of the Divide, plenty of sunshine generated by the big high pressure system. So that's going to be the situation. Looks like a little bit wet coastally and fine and sunny everywhere else. Business of the Briley predicted precipitation. Here you go. You can see the cloud clings to the coast, and from around about Sydney north, just really quite coastal, all of that rainfall. The rest of the state will be beaming under a big blue sky. All right, where are we off to tonight? You have been so brilliant during lockdown, taking us to some brilliant places and just keeping it very, very creative for us. Here we go. Condo. Oh, yeah, condo. Look at that sky. Brilliant stuff. Sunsets and it booms. Sally May Photography, thank you for sharing on Insta. Hashtag Daily Bailey NSW. And what you do is you take your phone like that, landscape, because this is one big screen. Also, follow me on Insta at Daily Bailey 10. You'd think I'd know that by now, wouldn't you? At Daily Bailey 10. Next up on the screen, it's got to be seen, Cogra Bay. Have a look at the fire in the night. That's a jetty worth wandering down to. Boak Handco. Thank you so much for sharing on Instagram. Brilliant, brilliant shot. We love your work. And finally tonight, have a look at that. You know what that is? That is a tawny frogmouth, and that's me looking into the empty pub on Friday. Just trying to get into the restaurant, just having a look, just looking in there. Let me in. All right, lovely. On Instagram, hashtag Daily Bailey NSW. I've only got eyes for that restaurant on Friday night, I can tell you. All right, thank you, Sads Bid. Let's get around Australia and have a look at what is happening weather-wise. Perth, fine and sunny at 24 degrees. Broome, 33, and a big shiny one. The skies are clear and perfect in Darwin, 34. Cairns, showers, 28 degrees. Brisbane, a fine and sunny one, 24. It's gorgeous. The Alice does it nicely too. Shivering in the desert down to 2 for a top of 21 degrees. Hobart, 10 through to 16, the spread. Melbourne, down to 5 for a top of 16 and a rather windy day. Sydney does 10 to 19 with a shower, and Brisbane, 13 through to 24 degrees. New South Wales, there's the zoom. Tamworth, down to 3 overnight, a top of 19 degrees, good looking day. 16 Broken Hill, hardly a cloud in the sky. Dubbo and Orange, the frost is back again tomorrow. Wagga Wagga, 3 to 17. Canberra, down to 0 for a top of 15 degrees under a big sunny sky. The coast, it drips a little. Sydney, Newcastle and Coffs Harbour and Lismore, all showering around about 21 or 20 degrees. Sydney tomorrow looks like this. There's going to be some southerly winds and there's going to be a shower or two for an hour or two. Campbelltown, 19 degrees, fine and sunny. Bankstown likewise. Parramatta, a little cloud, 18. The coast, the showers come for you. Gosford, 18. Terry Hills, 16 degrees. Sydney, 10 through to 19. And Mascot, 11 through to 19. And plenty of showers in your day. The official forecast for the Harbour City, 19 degrees, a showery morning and a cloudy afternoon. The full 7-day forecast and your wonderful weekend on the television in 25 minutes.
Making news now, hundreds of thousands of jobs lost in a month, millions on government assistance, and the cost of COVID-19 revealed. It's almost opening time for pubs, clubs, restaurants and bars. Why? After 7 weeks, some venues are saying it's not worth it. And wanted man Ricardo Barbaro is on his way back to Melbourne after being found in a Western Sydney apartment block how police tracked him down and then charged him with murder. The true cost of COVID-19 on Australian jobs was revealed today, and it is devastating. 600,000 people were laid off in just 1 month, and 6 million people are now relying on JobKeeper payments. The federal government is warning it won't get any better anytime soon.
It was sobering news we know is only going to get worse.
This is a tough day for Australia, a very tough day. Almost 600,000 jobs has been lost. Every one of them devastating.
The unemployment rate has spiked by 1% in just the month of April.
Terribly shocking, although not unanticipated.
Young Australians were hit the hardest, with a rise of more than 2% and a drop in the participation rate bigger than any seen since it was started in 1978. 500,000 fewer Australians are even bothering to look for work. But the government says its JobKeeper package has kept a bad situation from being even worse.
6 million Australians have been supported at their worst moment.
Labor thinks more could have been done to save jobs.
Aren't more Australians out of work today because the Prime Minister deliberately excluded them from the JobKeeper wage subsidy?
With bad news like this, it's no wonder Scott Morrison didn't want Parliament to sit during the coronavirus crisis. But, relenting late this afternoon, more sitting weeks will be issued for the month of June, right at a time when the next round of unemployment numbers are made public.
After 7 long weeks, pubs, clubs, cafes and restaurants will be open for dining in again for just 10 customers at a time from midnight tonight. But while those restrictions are easing, for many businesses, opening up again won't be so easy.
The schnitty and the beer is so close you can almost taste it. Pubs, clubs, restaurants and cafes dusting off the furniture, setting the tables and getting ready to serve.
We're happy to be back, baby steps obviously, and we're happy to prove to the government that we can do this properly and we can do this right, and we want to be open properly.
Come the stroke of midnight, New South Wales venues are allowed to serve 10 dine-in patrons. And there are rules attached. All must be seated and be 1.5 metres apart. That's not the only restriction being lifted. 5 people can now also visit your home and groups of 10 can catch up outside. For venues opening, the rules apply no matter the regular capacity.
We're not going to make any money out of this, but this is hopefully the beginning of a reopening of Sydney.
But some aren't jumping right in, instead waiting and watching others.
And that will prepare us, particularly for the next stage when we hope it'll be 20 and 50.
And with case numbers decreasing, many hope this will be sooner rather than later. Overnight, we recorded 4 new cases in New South Wales after conducting almost 10,000 tests. Right now, the total number of cases in the state is 3,063, but more than 2,500 people have now recovered from the virus. But with more movement and gathering this weekend, of course, comes more risk.
Please be careful when you're standing in a queue. The last thing you want is to get the disease or spread the disease as you're waiting in a queue for a service or to purchase something.
One of the new cases was a staff member at Warrington Public in the city's west. The primary school closed for cleaning in a scene that, according to the Premier, will become more common.
We should expect what we've seen happen at Warrington overnight, or in fact at Warragamba last week, to become a frequent occurrence.
It comes as the Federal Education Minister announced teachers will no longer have to give students an A, B or C.
Many students don't have access to remote learning and, providing a grade for a student in that circumstance is very difficult.
Welcome news, because at the moment, just getting by can be tough enough. Charlotte Goodlett for 10 News First.
Wanted man Ricardo Barbaro is on his way back to Victoria. Police arresting him at a Western Sydney penthouse late last night. He had been on the run for 10 days after the body of Ellie Price was found in a Melbourne apartment. He has now been charged with her murder.
Ricardo Barbaro in handcuffs after 10 days on the run.
Are you a killer, Ricardo?
Wanted over the alleged murder of his girlfriend.
Did you kill Ellie, Ricardo?
Why didn't you hand yourself in, Ricardo?
He fled from Melbourne, has a fixed address in Queensland, and police found him in Sydney. They raided a Riverside apartment following a tip-off.
They were wearing all black. I think they had a rifle, had some night vision goggles, and yeah, they were just outside. It's crazy.
They found Barbaro in the penthouse suite. Nervous neighbours overheard their attempts to coax the 33-year-old out of hiding.
Ricardo, listen to what we're telling you. You won't be harmed. Just come out with your arms up in the air.
Barbaro is wanted in relation to the death of Ellie Price. The pair dated on and off since October last year. The 26-year-old mother's body was found in her South Melbourne apartment last Monday. Police believe she may have been dead for more than a week. Today, Barbaro was charged with an interstate warrant for murder. 4 Victorian detectives attended Sydney court for his extradition hearing. They're now escorting him back to Melbourne by road. Barbaro is due to arrive in Melbourne late this evening, where he'll be remanded in custody. He's expected to appear before the Melbourne Magistrates Court on Saturday.
Did you kill Ellie?
Natasha Exelby for 10 News First.
The future of Virgin Australia has triggered an all-out war between the Queensland and federal governments. Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk is putting her money where her mouth is, launching a bid to secure a stake in the crippled carrier. Well, that's prompted a blistering attack from federal MPs who have slammed the proposal as an economic disaster.
When it comes to political plays, they don't get much bigger than this.
And it's not the intention of the Queensland Government to purchase the airline in its entirety, but we want to take a strategic stake.
Virgin Australia is in voluntary administration, saddled with $7 billion of debt and 90% owned by foreign interests, but the Treasurer wants in.
We're going to strike a very hard bargain. Foreign banks and foreign bondholders, they're going to have to take a haircut out of this. They're going to have to pay a price.
$200 million is already on the table with strings attached. The airline's base must remain in Brisbane and regional routes must keep flying.
Now that I have become the Treasurer, I've got a whole range of other artillery available to me, other than bazookas, and I'm not afraid to use that.
Around 20 bidders are believed to be interested in the embattled airline. The state government hasn't ruled out working with other parties. The Queensland Investment Corporation will devise and manage the proposal.
I know it's not my money, it's other people's money. It belongs to Queenslanders.
The Treasurer says the government has a pretty good idea of the financial position of the airline, but he doesn't know what Virgin Australia is worth in its current state.
Probably somewhere between 600 million and $1 billion, depending on the exact final level of the debt.
The federal government won't be offering any support, the Prime Minister shooting down the plan.
Well, I'm not going to buy into that.
This is nothing more than a populist brain fart.
I cannot understand for the life of me how people don't want to back Queensland and back Queensland jobs.
And it didn't stop there. Peter Dutton took to Twitter last night, unleashing on Anastasia Palaszczuk. In the middle of a crisis, they want to buy an airline. It is laughable. She leads a government which is corrupt and chaotic. The Treasurer fired back. Look, mate, just stick to cruise ships. A reference to the Ruby Princess.
They can't run trains on time. How are they going to run an airline?
I mean, I can't be distracted by the game playing of Peter Dutton.
Time is ticking. Tomorrow, the bidders who put their hat in the ring will be revealed. John Paul Gonzo for 10 News First.
Channel 7's former commercial manager who defrauded the corporation of almost $8 million has been sentenced to 5 years in jail. John Fitzgerald falsified invoices from 2 fake companies to fleece the network of millions of dollars and was only caught out when an auditor was called in. The 58-year-old grandfather has paid back 90% of money owed. He blew his wife Michelle a kiss as he was taken away by corrective services. He will be eligible for release in 3 years. Police suspect a ferocious inferno at a wrecking yard in Sydney's southwest overnight was the work of an arsonist. It took firefighters more than 2 hours to extinguish the blaze as fuel tanks exploded around them.
The fire was growing extremely rapidly. We had numerous problems trying to contain the fire. Numerous fuel tanks were rupturing. LPG tanks exploding, gas cylinders exploding.
About 50 vehicles were destroyed, but no one was injured. Police are appealing for witnesses to please come forward. Stay with us. Up next, to the cancer specialists taking on Dr. Google, and it's the patients who win. In sport, Titans forward Bryce Cartwright standing firm against a flu shot policy.
Creating the ultimate memories sometimes means creating the toughest stains. Improved Omo Ultimate is Omo's most powerful laundry liquid. It attacks your tough stains first time and whitens and brightens. Try Omo Ultimate.
When we can all get out of our own backyards, it's time to start enjoying this one. In a 10 special, we talk to the people and visit the places that remind us why we're so lucky to live in the lucky country. Join us for the Love Australia project, 7:30 Friday on 10.
We all know someone whose job has been affected by COVID-19. Now a number has been put on it, 600,000 people out of work. Charlotte Goodlett takes a look at if that number really reflects the true state of affairs and how the market reacted to the day's devastating numbers.
The big economic story today was, of course, the announcement of Australia's unemployment rate. And while it was better than many economists predicted, there's been a lot of commentary that stimulus from the federal government has masked a lot of the actual pain. It has gone up to 6.2%. That's an increase of more than 100,000 people out of work, the highest number since July 2015 percentage-wise. There were big falls as well in the number of hours worked and the participation rate. And if we combine all of these things, it probably paints a better picture of what's actually going on. 1 in 5 people who were employed in March either left employment altogether or had their work slashed. That's 2.7 million Australians. We also found out from the Treasurer that 6 million Australians from 860,000 businesses have now received JobKeeper, while a further 1.6 million are on JobSeeker. Speaking of jobs, there'll be some My employees getting back to work tomorrow. 8 stores across the country, 5 stores in New South Wales, 2 in WA and 1 in South Australia reopening. To the markets now, the ASX was hammered today, down 1.7% at the close. Big banks were a big lag. CBA, the worst of them, down 3%. Oil was under pressure while GrainCorp performed well, up 11.5%. Looking at the dollar now, the currency market also responded to those job numbers. It was down against the majors today, and right now it's buying 64.3 US cents.
In a fight back against misinformation from Dr. Google, a new website is bringing fresh hope to lung cancer patients. It is no cure, but it does provide accurate advice that they will want to hear.
Introducing a bunch of regular Aussies.
OK, got it. Got it now.
Tripping up with the online tech.
Oh, whoops, I stopped.
But with a very special connection. They all have lung cancer.
But within a few months, it had metastasised to my brain and kidney and into my soft tissue.
Alison has never smoked and her situation would crumble many of us. But instead, she's one of 16 members of Lung Cancer Search and Rescue, an online website populated by cancer patients for cancer patients.
You can hear the fear and the pain in their voice. To be able to provide them with something reliable, something sensible, something reasonable.
The Lung Cancer Foundation saw a desperate need for something other than Dr. Google.
They can hear hopeful and optimistic stories rather than it's a death sentence.
Alison still recalls her Dr. Google experience.
And it still brings up those emotions thinking about the numbers that I saw. They're distressing, very distressing to see that.
People with questions about Australia's biggest cancer killer can now access the Lung Cancer Search and Rescue site.
So what causes lung cancer?
What is targeted therapy?
And get answers, compassion and even hope. And one other message everyone is keen to emphasise. Keep your GP and or specialist in the loop, whether it's just a simple inquiry or a more worrying cancer concern.
And not let fear of COVID-19 or other factors stop them from seeing their doctors in time.
Tim Collins for 10 News First.
Matt Burke is back now with a look at the rest of the day in sport. And Matt, the latest hurdle for a rebooted NRL season could be a court case.
Yeah, that's right, Sandra. Good evening. League boss, however, Peter V'landys has won his battle against club coaches to go back to one referee. Now he's on a war footing with the whistleblowers. Having convinced coaches the one-referee system will cut costs and make rugby league a better product, Volandi's launched a stinging attack on the professional match officials' body. The body's chairman, Silvio Del Vecchio, is threatening legal action.
Totally ludicrous, and I don't think his confrontational and misleading approach is helping his association. We've done nothing wrong.
Now, the referees will claim in their legal action that games being policed by only one official could be dangerous for players. Meantime, the first 2 rounds of the revamped draw should be released tomorrow. Bryce Cartwright is attempting to get a medical exemption as the only Titan left standing against the flu shot after Brian Kelly rejoined teammates today. It comes as Broncos coach Anthony Seibold slams suggestions Queensland Cubs should accommodate anti-vaxxers by moving games south.
He got the jab, so Brian Kelly's free to play.
I just want to get back in the training with the boys, and rip it in,
And did so straight away, returning to the field for the first time in 8 days. But there was no sign of Bryce Cartwright, just a cryptic post from his partner on social media, hinting his teammates should strike to support him.
Now, if the Chief Medical Officer in Queensland doesn't want us to allow players to participate if they're not vaccinated, we'll respect that. All those restrictions will be removed once that border restrictions are removed anyway.
6 other players in southern clubs are also without the flu shot, prompting concerns the NRL draw will change to accommodate them.
If we're going to cater for the minority, then we're kidding ourselves, really.
The Broncos coach comparing the flu shot debate to 2 of his other passions.
It's like when you go to the pub. You don't like paying $10 for a schooner, do you, when you go to the pub? But if you want company and you want connection with your mates and you want to put a bet on, and you want to listen to the music, you've got to go and pay $10 to the pub. Otherwise, you can pay $2.50 for your home supervisor at home. If you want to play footy, you get the jab. If you don't want to play footy, stay at home.
The Melbourne Storm are back home at Amy Park, training there for the first time today, with the hope they'll also host games in Melbourne. The first 2 weeks of the draw will be confirmed tomorrow.
So the coaches and the players have got some certainty and take their time, and hopefully the whole draw will be done by the end of next week.
Kieran Foran is almost certain to play round 3. The Bulldogs 5/8 on the mend after a shoulder reconstruction in November.
We really started lifting a lot heavier weight through the gym, and I'm feeling very confident.
Veronica Eggleton for 10 News First.
F1 driver Lando Norris is the first overseas rig-in to win the Supercars E-Series. Craig Lowndes would like to go back to the real thing after his introduction as a wildcard. And it was time to make a mess at the Circuit of Americas as the virtual racing provided some hilarious stacks. McLaren's Norris cruised to victory in race 2.
And it was good. I had decent pace, I think, and it was a nice little win.
And Shane Van Gisbergen and Anton De Pasquale collided on the final lap of race 3, but the Kiwi made way to avoid a penalty. Van Gisbergen had run race 1 and is closing in on series leader Scott McLaughlin. And Sandra, these guys are having so much fun. There's no repercussions in the virtual world. It's just play on.
It's the only way to race, I reckon.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Matt. Coming up next, Mr. Bailey's back. And guess what? He's got your 7-day forecast. Stick around.
This year has been hard for all of us. Just imagine how much harder it is for homeless and vulnerable Australians.
When you donate to Mission Australia, you're investing a seed of hope in Australia's most vulnerable. There's never been a more important time to support them. Donate now.
This is a Nature Valley checklist. Whole grain oats? Yes. Artificial colours and flavours? No. Delicious ingredients? Yes. Preservatives? No. Big taste? Yes. Nature Valley. Get more out.
Up next, unemployment is rising at record speed and the PM says it will only get worse.
This is a tough day for Australia.
Backlash over the Queensland government's bid to buy struggling airline Virgin Australia. And baby, we've got a Powderfinger reunion on our mind. Bernard Fanning zooms in for a chat. The Project next.
Well, there was a day that was hit by the ugly stick, and as you well know, I know a little bit about that department, and you can tell. The Daily Bailey weather wall. I can tell you some troughs are going to trigger a little bit of trouble. That one there on the central coast of New South Wales means some precipitation clinging from about Sydney north to the northern rivers for the next 2 or 3 days. Big high pressure system, you can see that, bases itself over southeastern Australia, ridges back to northern New South Wales, which means west of the Divide, mainly fine and sunny for the next 2 or 3 days. Cold front about to give southwestern WA a little bit of a whack. New South Wales, though, let's check in on... It's always a pleasure to check in on a Friday, isn't it? And this is what it looks like. Broken Hill, fine and sunny and 16 degrees. Dubbo, cloud-free, glorious, 19. Jack Frost says, hello, orange in the morning and a top of 13 degrees without a cloud in the afternoon. Tamworth, 3 through to 19 degrees. Coffs Harbour, showery, as we've said. The coast will get the precipitation. Lismore, likewise, 20 degrees. Newcastle in that queue as well, 20 degrees. Nowra, a spread of 7 through to 18. Bega, a brilliant looking day. Chilly in the morning, 1 degree for a maximum of 18, and it's just fine and sunny in Canberra as well. So let's check in on the super suburbs of Sydney on a fabulous Friday that's going to be a little wet around the ears. Wollongong, 17 degrees a shower. Mascot showers at 19. Terry Hill, 16 degrees in the shower. Sydney itself, 19 degrees, showery. Richmond, 18, fine and sunny. Penrith, 19 degrees, fine and sunny. Let's have a look at the 7-day forecast for you. And let's concentrate on your weekend. Maybe a shower by the coast, 20 degrees Saturday, and Sunday, 21 degrees. In the west, glorious. Your weekend, Saturday and Sunday, fine and sunny. Sols.
Good news. Thank you, Tim. That is the news for now, this Thursday, May 14. From the team, look after yourselves and each other. Good night.
Tonight, unemployment is rising at record speed and the PM says it will only get worse.
This is a tough day for Australia. Almost 600,000 jobs lost.
Backlash over the Queensland government's bid to buy struggling airline Virgin Australia.
This year's been jam-packed with important announcements. Meet the Auslan interpreters, making sure everyone's informed.
And baby, we've got a Powderfinger reunion on our mind.